Okay, that is Pinto Mountain, which is about 4,000 feet. This is Turkey Flats. And basically what it is just a valley full of alluvium. That's a sand dune over there, the whitish area. But all this gravel came from mountains like that. Before the Ice Age, that mountain used to have trees and it was forested. After the Ice Age and the climate changed and got dry, all that died. And then storms would just wash all the soil down into this valley. You can see those alluvial fans over there where they just washes everything off the mountain into the valley. And we see a lot of these guys. Creosote bushes. They are pretty tough. They can stand up to the dry conditions and heat around here. That's Pinto Mountain. Apparently, some guy thought this would be a great place for a turkey farm. Didn't pan out too good though. Not enough water, too far from the market, so he went bust. That's why it's called Turkey Flats. He had a dream, however. This is a pretty wild plant. It's called an ocotillo. And it's not really a cactus. It's a deciduous plant. And the thing about that is, it doesn't grow its leaves in the spring and drop them in the fall like most deciduous plants. It has its leaves dependent on rain, water. It can grow and drop leaves up to 5 times a year. So if you get a pretty good rain, or a little rainy spell, it'll sprout leaves, and sometimes even a red flower blooms out. And when it dries up, gets dry, they drop their leaves and conserve water and wait for the next rain. So, pretty strange. Ocotillo. And they like to grow in alluvium, like we just talked about. This is a alluvial plain where all the soil and gravel and everything washed off these mountains and formed this thick layer of rock and sediment. Pretty interesting. There's a cacti of some sort. Got some nasty looking needles on it. Turtles live out in here and kangaroo rats and that kind of thing, but not much else. By the way, this is the Joshua Tree National Park. there's my new hat. So, thought it was pretty cool. But behind me is the Ocachillo. Okay, these are jumping choyas. Man, that's a lot of them, whole field of them. People call them jumping choyas because it's easy, if you even get near them, you get stuck. They don't really jump, but if you brush up against it, that thing breaks off and all those needles stick in you, just like a porcupine. No good. That up there is the remains of the Silver Bell mine. In the 1930s, they pulled gold out of there. 40s, they had lead, and then copper in the 50s, and then it petered out. So, the Silver Bell mine. Huh, got a little bloom here. And we got little pods. Wonder if those are tasty. This plant is called Camellia arborea, or the bladder pod spider flower. Apparently it emits a foul odor to discourage insects from eating it. Well, we're in the transition zone here between the Colorado Desert to the south, which is lower and drier, and the Mojave Desert, which is to the north and higher elevation, and that's where the Joshua trees like to live. So the California Desert and the Mojave Desert, they meet about this area right in here. Well, we're at higher altitude in the Mojave Desert. It is a little cooler here. Thing that you notice right away are these rounded boulders, and apparently they're an example of spheroidal weathering. What happened is the magma from the earth bubbled up. It didn't erupt to the surface, but it formed a bubble under the earth, and when that cooled, it cracked. And then over time, with erosion and uplifting, the cracks were exposed, and with wind and rain, the sharp edges got rounded off, and it made them into these rounded boulders. It kind of looks like they were tumbled around in a river, but it would take a heck of a river. So, spheroidal weathering. Fancy word. These rocks are composed of a real coarse grain granite. You can see the gray to lightish are quartz. The lighter and the pinker are either plagioclase or potassium feldspar, which is the pink one. Wow. But they do tend to erode down easier than you would think. And I guess that partly accounts for the rounding. This is a yucca plant. The Joshua trees are a species of yucca, but this is a true yucca. You can tell more by, they have these strings that come off of their leaves. They're not nearly as tall. This is about as tall as a yucca will get. 6-8 feet tall. The natives used to pull this off and make it into thread and use this as a needle to sew with. So that's pretty cool. That's your yucca. Another kind of neat observation is when this magma was coming up from down below, it was forcing its way between other rocks. So you can see this is a clast, or a rock that's not the same as this, that was included in that magma. So this solidified before that did, and it was in the molten lava. And you can see there's several of them sticking out from the hunks of this molten chunk of rock. This is kind of cool. This is called an aplite dike. And basically what it is whenever the granite was cooling, it cracked, of course, as it constricted. And then the magma that was left over, the hot magma, oozed or was squirted between the cracks and filled the cracks up with a different type of magma. And you can see this is a little different texture. And the other thing about it is it's harder than the granite that it extruded into. So you can see how it's raised above. This part weathered out and that weathered out, and this is more resistant. So they tend to stick up above the side of the rock. Pretty cool. Here's a thicker aplite dike. You can see it just follows right along. It even goes right over there and goes right up through that crack. That's pretty neat. That dark area there, that's called desert varnish. It's an iron and magnesium stain that forms on the outside of rocks that the Native Americans used to peck off and make pictographs out of. This particular granite is called White Tank Monzo granite. It's an igneous, intrusive rock that's solidified 15 to 20 miles below the surface during the Cretaceous and Jurassic periods. And that's like 75 to 200 million years ago. Because the magma was deep, it cooled slowly, resulting into these large crystals. Through plate tectonics and uplifting, faulting, these rocks were brought to the surface and weathered into their current state. Yeah, we've got some blue and green lichen growing there on the side of the rock. So they must get some moisture up in here. Wow, isn't this cool? And as with clouds, these rocks sometimes form things that look like a skull, a heart. They've got different names for the different formations. Well, I don't think that I'm skinny enough. Gonna have to back out. Goes on and on. That's a pretty neat rock right there. There's another rather large apatite dike. These granites, the base rocks, are from the Cretaceous period. About 75 million years ago is when they were intruded or bubbled up near the Earth's surface and formed plutons, which are big bubbles of magma. Like in Idaho, if you have a huge area, maybe multiple plutons, which forms a huge area of granite, that's called a batholith. So there's a huge batholith in Idaho. There's some guys. The trouble with scooting on your butt on that stuff is it's pretty abrasive. You're gonna wear a hole in your butt. This old camera has a pretty good zoom on it. Here's something else we look at. The old sun. It's got that ring around it, formed by ice crystals up in the atmosphere. Kind of different. Gets semi-repetitive, but it is pretty cool. It's a neat spot. I'm gonna have to go up there. And we got my yucca plant. Well, we're coming up upon some Joshua trees. There's its neighbor, the yucca. There's the old jumping cholla. But there is our Joshua tree. Supposedly the Mormons, when they were coming through this area, thought that looked like Joshua with his arms outstretched to the heavens, leading the way to the promised land. So, at least that is the story. But that's how they got their name. Sticky. Hoi. Have to admit, this is pretty magical landscape. Well, I'm up pretty high, but I probably should be prudent and won't climb up any higher. Looks a little iffy. I came up this way. Gonna have to lose some more weight. But I made it. Got a little Joshua tree up here. Or a big Joshua tree. Pretty cool stuff. It's a great place for kids too. And the one thing about kids, you can always tell they're around. Just listen. Now here's something not so good. Gigantic multi-branched Joshua tree just blew over. You can see though it was compromised. This is fresh here, but that has been broken and it was all hollowed out. I don't know what this is. It's like a core somehow. But that poor little guy must have just happened because the fronds are still green. That's too bad. Yeah, you can't tell. They're as green as the one that's alive right there. So it must have just happened. This is pretty cool. It's the inside skeleton of a cactus. If you look closely, I'm not sure if I can get that right about in there, you can see there's still some cactus needles sticking on it. But that's the inside of a cactus. It's like a skeleton. This is pretty cool. Just laying out here in the desert. Again, this is a Sonoran desert. Is this piece of almost pure quartz. Of course, that's one of the more abundant minerals on Earth. But that's a pretty pure piece. This is a long dead Joshua tree. And here's a little jumping. Ouch! God, he did jump. Look at that bastard. It's amazing how sharp they are. Man, oh man. Ouch. It's almost like they are alive. Man, that's not going to shake off. That hurts. Anyway, what I was going to tell you or talk about was this. It's not like wood. It's almost like, it's real fibrous. It's almost like a felt. Man, that little devil stuck me in the finger. I can't believe how sharp that was. I barely touched it. Well, that wasn't set up either. It bit me. Here you can see the skeleton insides of the cholla cactus. Pretty wild. This one's pretty dead. Hope those aren't fire ants. Could be. I think, in all prudence, I should leave them be. Here's another tip I got about these chollas. Again, if you get around them, those little white babies that are on the ground, anyway, they stick to your shoe. And then you're in the car, or you're at home, and you cross your leg, and the old cholla gets you. Not good. This is pretty cool. This is almost like a mistletoe. It's got little red berries, but you can see it doesn't reach the ground. It just grows in this tree. Gets its nutrients from the air, I believe. It could, but I don't think, derive its nutrients from that tree that it's on. But pretty cool, no matter what. As it turns out, mistletoe is a true parasite. The birds distribute its seeds and they land on the host tree. The mistletoe uses a modified root that penetrates the bark of the host tree and sucks up its nutrients and moisture. So it is a true parasite. There's a dead ancestor. Got the typical headdress on. He's smiling at you. That was Floyd. I remember him well. More rocks. Here's another example of one of those volcanic dikes. You can see here's the vein that intruded in the crack in these granites. Then when you get down to this plane right here, then you can see more of the horizontal surface of it. A dike that is horizontal like that is sometimes called a sill. They're more horizontal. So it's just terminology, same thing. Here's another thing I noticed about the granites out here. The texture is really rough. The crystals are quite large, but the cementing medium doesn't seem to be nearly as strong. So they weather or break down. So if you look at down here, it breaks down into these. So because they weather so easily, the edges all round off. It's almost like it was made out of mud and you had a lot of rain, it would just dissolve away. That's kind of like what's happening. In the east, the granite is a little tougher. It doesn't break down as easy to chemical and weather erosion. It still does, but it's not as fast. That's a pretty cool place. That rock right there is a little scary. I know you lose a little scale, but that is a big rock. And if it breaks loose and comes rolling down here, you're going to see this boy set the world record for the 100-meter dash. Spooky looking. That's how big that baby is. Wow. Hey, this is evidence of a geological fault that ran through here. Oops, there's an ant. These are called slicken lines. You can see the direction that the fault fractured in it. Where they rub together, the stone almost polishes itself. It's similar, over here is the same thing. It's similar to what a glacier does. When it goes over rock, it eventually polishes it, or it can if it's the proper type of rock. But faults do the same thing, where the rocks rub together, and they can polish it and form slicking lines. Yeah, we've got a dinosaur egg on the horizon up there. It's like a few rocks tumbled down here to the bottom. That is one pile of rocks, isn't it? Over there's a little ledge. Must be some water collects. Where you got water, you got plants. Well, another thing, try as I may, I've been unable to spot a snake or a rattlesnake. That's kind of a weird deal. The tree's growing sideways out of that rock. That's pretty cool. Huh. But no rattlesnakes. I guess that's good. But as long as I see him first, then I think I'm okay. I guess that's the trick though, isn't it? Okay. Signing off. Well, the sun is getting low in the sky. Been a beautiful day. Low 70s. I kept looking at books and videos of people, their top 10 hikes in Joshua Tree, but I have found that the best hikes are where the people aren't. Solid.